Um, um, I will talk about youth leadership. I reframe it a little bit. Um, and I go back 50 years, and not to a point, but saying youth leadership, training young people as agents of change in their communities, has been part of civic education in the US for 50 years. That's on Wikipedia. It used to be 40 years, but I think it's 10 years ago that I had a look at it. And it's further explained as it's young people exercising authority over themselves, doing projects, self-organized together. And when they move on, like the early leaders or founders, for example, they quit high school and leave town for university, they pass on leadership to others. That's an important process. You got to train people, and then they are able. These are like cornerstones of youth leadership. So people that give a PowerPoint on climate change, today this is labeled youth leadership. It isn't really, So there is inspirational speakers, and there's people that can reiterate data and that can hold inspirational speeches, especially Americans, because everybody is Hollywood. Which is not a bad thing. But I see that there's a lot of delusion and blah, 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 whoever uses the term now. And I'm really a fan of definitions. If we talk hip and hippie, for example, that's super important. Highly intelligent people or just the hippie. So if we look at youth leadership, it's not youth participation. Youth participation is the school says we're going to have a playground and the children can decide on the colors of the materials. This is a real world example from Berlin. They call this youth participation. Then there is youth voice. The mayor, the town is in trouble, and let's hear what the young people say. That means they come, there's an event, and then young people can each get a minute, 10 kids or so, That doesn't mean what they say is going to be taken into account. So it's not even participation. It's called youth voice. So they're not silenced in prison. That's already an advantage to the 30s, but, no big deal really. And then there's tokenism. I mean, you know everything about it. It's in your books. So tokenism is, we invite a young person on a podium because we have a green business or a green tech conference or a climate conference, be it at the UN or the local town council or whatever conference. And there's a young person who they pick from social media because that person is trending. And then, and what are you doing? Yeah, we have a plastic bag, whatever campaign, in Bali or somewhere, and we do this and that. Yeah, and then it goes on, and then comes Elon Musk and Bill Gates, and we talk about GMOs, So that means the young person, they're asked by a moderator, what do you do? What's your favorite subject at school? And then everybody thinks it's so cool. They get young people on stage to have a say, But the young people cannot decide what are we going to talk about. So that's tokenism, because they're not coming together to find a solution or to get something going, but it just looks really nice and nothing happens. So that's basically what we see all the time. That's why nothing happens. And it's a big lie, but everybody thinks they're being super cool, The adults think they're being super cool. So I like to define, what is youth leadership? Oh, yeah, take action. Yeah, take action. I get super pissed off, and I just wrote this in a brochure here, so that the people that are joining Youth Leader, when we train them, as, I should be in the picture, right? See, as a media professional. So now when we train youth leaders, in youth leader programs and stuff, it starts with some definitions it actually talks about 1960s hips. Not sure if you can see it.
Yeah.
But also definitions then of social entrepreneurship, of social business, and youth leadership, and the purpose of schooling.
So that's a brochure, a little booklet that people who want to volunteer get as part of their training. And it's called Youth Leader Programs.
Yes, and before that we have Youth Leadership 101, which is also a Youth Leader 101, which shows you teenage heroes, but then also in different spheres, development, changemaker student clubs at schools, and so on. You know, the roles of adults, and so on, and different programs and tools that Youth Leader has, like the exhibits and like a changemaker program, like project partnerships, like traveling to heroes in India, and so on. So there's a whole lot of things to talk about there.
If someone wanted to get those brochures or to find out more, where would they go? What's the link?
That and a lot of fabulous other resources, really treasures, so many inspiring stories, the music of these young people today, you know. It's on the Youth Leader website. It's youth-leader.org. And the hyphen is really important because otherwise it's always about definitions. Others that use the term youth leadership will be Christian organizations, you know, and then missionaries, either young missionaries or for kids, I don't know, you know. But sometimes when I call UNESCO or others, you know, and then they have a look at the website and then they ask, what is your political affiliation? I say, you're on the wrong website. Do you have the hyphen? They do the hyphen. So it's youth-leader.org. And
over the years, what percent have been girls, what percent boys, and how has their involvement changed over time?
Yeah, I have to... I go back to the youth leadership because that has something to do with it. So on the Youth Leader website, you will have a crash course also that is like a guided tour. It's so exciting. We had people now go through it, you know, and just adding a few final documents. It's so exciting, and you can get a certificate. There's lots of videos. It's an enormous initiation to youth leadership. I'm so proud of it. So that means in the US, you've had youth leadership widespread, not everywhere, it's missing in many places, but defined and organized for 50 years. But it's even longer than that, because you've had the Girl Scouts for 100 years. I don't know what they did in their first decades, but I think they were always not defined so much as pioneers like the Boy Scouts, but doing social medical service, but also environmental, I think, from pretty early on. But if you look at Girl Scouts, there's millions of American women that went through that and that did projects together. And if you look at their badges today, bronze badge, silver badge, gold badge, and if you look at the national gold badges of every year, some of them totally qualify in here, like Elizabeth's new laws on bees in New York State and so on, and unlocked funds for training the population and doing research on what bees need and so on in the state.
And what was that girl's name? Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Kloski, or Kloskai with a Y at the end. Elizabeth Kloskai.
And what book is she in, if people want to read more about her?
She is in, you can Google her, but you'll find her also here in New Kids on the Planet. Yeah. And, or you have Maddie and Rhiannon, who forced Girl Scouts, their own organization, you know, to get dirty palm oil out of their cookies, you know. So it was a strong step, and then it influenced Kellogg's, ABC Bakers, and Wilmar, you know, and there were two 13-year-olds that campaigned for 3 years, you know, so it's huge. They achieved what adult organizations haven't achieved for 30 years when they're 13-year-olds. So there's a lot of amazing stuff happening among the Girl Scouts, and that means it's girls doing projects, and it's projects with relevant impact, and this is the word, because a lot of activism is advocacy. including Fridays for Future. It's only advocacy. I'm not saying, I don't want to qualify it at a quality level as only, but in terms of scope, it's only advocacy. So if you look at the result of what really happened, it's advocacy at national government, not local, national government to tweak the rules about climate and dirty industry. The result is nil, is 0.0. Greta says it herself. Okay, also in Germany, no matter what you might have, exactly nothing. After 18 months of daily being in talk shows and so on, zero change. If you look at the gun laws, you know, there's a few things that happen, NRA going bankrupt and stuff, and a few national gun laws passed in 3, 4, 5 states, but all the ruckus with March for Our Lives and all the huge stuff, you know, after the Florida shooting, at national government mainly, and basically nothing happened, and for the past 1.5 years we haven't heard what's going on with the kids that were involved, you know, so they disappeared. So we have the climate lawsuit of Shoteskat, but it's more other kids. It's not, he was the most visible, but it's like, I don't know, like 21 kids, I think. So it was against the Obama administration. So that means it's like 5 or 6 years, you know, but yet nothing happened by today. So, and these are the 3 big things that got into mainstream media. Advocacy, when young people scream and cry, I'm not against that. I'm totally for rage at the Reagan, you know. They scream, cry, bam, you know, like when Rose McGowan freaked out, you know, about Harvey Weinstein, and then Me Too really escalated or become seen when that inner volcano exploded. Yeah, Tantra, women power, the dragon, the feminine chakra is that force, you know. I'm totally for it. So what then happens, when they scream and roar and cry like the bear mama protecting her babies, that's the female power. That's one of the reasons why there's more females, I assume. Then the mainstream media pay attention. So they detect the roaring advocates when they complain to national government that they don't protect the kids against getting shot and against climate change. That's the only things mainstream media notices and blows up. And everybody invites to talk show. All these badass heroes with their enormous impact, tangible impact, doing projects, not protests, go totally unnoticed. No one sees them. Only the eloquent speakers that are like Greta, like Shoteskat, like Emma Gonzalez, of Much of Our Lives, the eloquent speakers, basically talented Michael Jacksons of protest, everybody like, oh, wow. But nothing, ask all the animals and plants on the planet, nothing got better for them in all these years. So what if 7 million Fridays for Future strikers, that's who participated in that one September, if they just did what the naive, non-political American kid does, lemonade sales, a lemonade sale, okay, $100 per month, or a bake sale, or both. Add a green smoothie, you make even more bucks on that one. Per month, 7 million times $100. $700 a month, $700 million a month, in a year, $10 billion, and put that into restoration programs. If you would go for a project, and if you yourself did the work, not just 3 hours of walkout on the Friday, asking the government to pay someone to fix it, this is the old paradigm of incompetent voters who say, I don't know the solutions. We back the experts, but at the same time you hide behind the experts because you consider yourself incompetent. Greta also says, I don't know the solutions, you ask the scientists. I know why she does it, but it's that old paradigm. So the scientists are to tell the government who to pay to fix the problem. Whereas the citizens, then we can go back to school and watch Netflix. They're not compelled to learn solutions themselves and implement them at local level. But this is what these teens are doing who do projects at enormous scope. You know, they clean up rivers, they raise millions of dollars for building orphanages for the super poor in India. They make water a human right in 30 cities and so on, you know, as individuals. So they do tangible projects and they say, I do it. I'm not shifting responsibility to national government, nor to my town government. I'm not waiting for anyone. I'm doing it. And this is normally what teens are like. Because shifting to the political sphere, that was the 70s. It's a different level of a bigger scope. You know more of the world. It's twins. So before Fridays for Future came, I usually said the 1970s, it was twins marching in the streets with advocacy. Now we have a new phenomenon. We have thousands and thousands of teenagers across North America who do projects locally with tangible impact. And I always say, to measure that something happens, they're changing lives, they're changing the land, they're changing learning by having changemaker student clubs at school, they're changing laws, and they're changing industries. Some are closing down dirty factories, like Alexandra. She has closed down a dirty factory that had caused her town a 9-time cancer level over the national average. That had been going on for 30 years, and the adult generations had no clue what to do about it. She started, and 10 months later, the factory was closed.
What town was that?
I don't remember.
What's her last name?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Because she's not yet in the book.
Okay.
She's new from this year. But I was about to say, if on YouTube you look for the Brower Youth Award winners, Brower Youth Award 2020, she's one of the 5 or 6. So here is another signal. You have the Brower Youth Award for 20 years, times 6, that's 120 badass youth. So recently they had more advocates because some years they checked them on the climate thing recently, but before they always had tangible projects. Then you have Action for Nature Award and a few others, plus the Girl Scouts thing. That means every year you have the total badasses in these awards, spiritual Spirit of Prudence Award by the president and stuff. So, and these are selected from 10,000s. in Europe, I mean, I've been here for 21 years. There's like 1.5, you know, because it doesn't exist as a concept. So now to talk about the girls and some of the historic development. Also among Fridays for Future protesters in Germany, it's 70+% girls. 70 is only a little about 50, but 2 girls, 1 boy. Even 3 girls, 1 boy. 75%. And this is exactly the ratio that I've seen before Fridays for Future among the teenage heroes. Usually when I look at awards, I pick maybe 1 to go into youth leader, because it's the high impact ones with really magical solutions that others can replicate and where there's a good video. So that people can really understand the solution and they're accessible. So, and it's 80% girls. And that's where I would say, oh yeah, it's because with Girl Scouts, you know, for 100 years there's this tradition, it's more among girls, but also in Germany, without any such tradition, there's 75% that get their butt up for Fridays for Future.
And also boys have Boy Scouts, and they have service as part of Boy Scouts, so that's been a strong tradition too.
Yeah, but here in Germany, nothing. We just do sports. So I would assume that it's gotta be something that women, and this, I don't agree with now, you know, when inhabitants of empire who are bots, who don't even know how to love their children and so on, it's really tough, but I think most of them, they get children or they breed because otherwise they feel bad about themselves or towards their parents, something's missing out in life. It's not by a fully unfolded, unconditional and love for the kids. And this is why then many complain, oh, I got to give up my career and it's so tiring and they're shitting everywhere and it's expensive, complaining. So if you really make that decision, and that is why I started out today, the first thing I said, super mama Chrissy, super mama. And she's like she's among those liberating women, being yourself, living all your feelings, and she is everything: entrepreneur, musician, initiator, guiding tours to initiation in the Andes, all over the place. She's hanging out with shamans, but she says the most fulfilling, magical thing for me is to be a mom for my children. That is the most amazing purpose and sacred and so on.
What's her first and last name?
Christina Charlie, and and she's also known as Firemane. That's the name that appeared. But Christina Firemane Charlie. So she's a great teacher and role model. That's why we have a poster with 35 different expressions of her, and people say, "Whoa, it's all the same woman." Yeah. And as a role model for the girls, can you feel all those feelings? Can you express them? Because many haven't dared express the savageness or the craziness or the menstrual blood or the authority or other things, or the nudity of dancing around a fire, because you can't even dance freely because without vampires staring at you or preying on you, often, so many of these things, they're innate feelings that they have, like my super sensual badass girlfriend back then, they cannot express because they can't do it at home. They haven't felt it before. It's not unlocked. So we use Chrissy as a role model with kind of an action guide with, can you feel that? Can you express it? And then you, like, with girlfriends together, because it can be an amplifier of going crazy. I mean, there's nothing more awesome, I find, than a bunch of 15-year-old girls, where others would say, geez, man, like a bunch of chicken. And I say, yeah, this is what they are, but they go wild. And I love that. They pop like champagne, It's so alive. It's so
when
cool.
you were in high school, you really felt constrained, and I think you used the word rigid. Do you think that's changed for boys now? Was it different for your son when he was in high school? What do you see with like teenage men's roles now?
I think it has changed a lot since the 90s. Because now everywhere we see people dancing savagely without needing to go to dance class and learn where to put your feet. But since then we have hip hop and techno, and everybody is just throwing their arms and legs wherever they want. In the 90s it was way better because, first of all, everybody was on drugs, which helped the bots to freak out, but it's not what I mean. But because there was no show in techno, but we came together because the music was crazy, and it usually was in dark halls with 2 or 3 lasers, but no show, and nobody knew the DJ's name. Today, when you go to a techno club, the DJ's name is often behind him or her in 5-meter high letters, because they now do the same thing, like back then at Bruce Springsteen's or Madonna shows, that 5,000 people go there, they stare at the stage at that one person and consume. Whereas at the techno things, it was all dark, people were in all directions, they had eyes closed because you were tripping and dancing in trance inside, like in an African village. Whereas today, much of the stuff you see in these popular things, be it Boiler Room or these abominable Tomorrowland techno festivals, everybody's staring in the same direction at quasi Madonna DJ on stage, not going in their own tripping thing. It's not a common journey. And there's so much laser show that it might as well be a big Christmas party. So it's not the same experience, and I don't see people dancing that much anymore because they don't dive into their inner savage jungle. And you don't necessarily need drugs for that. It's just people used a lot of them back then, but I hear there's still plenty of drugs today. But this omnipresence of just being crazy shamelessly and playing super stupid, in all these YouTube shows where guys are throwing stones or billiard things against each other and, all kind of stupid, crazy stuff. I think people, it's more acceptable to be silly.
Mm-hmm.
And back then you were always, yeah. So you can be silly, and everybody comes up with a new stupid dance move on TikTok and YouTube, so that's all part of kind of being silly. And at the same time, it becomes in a way you got to behave that way. So I don't think it's totally liberated, but it's better than back then. Also in terms of, I hardly ever saw black people in my teenage days. I mean, in Germany you don't do anyway, but I also didn't on TV. The only ones I saw was Michael Jackson and Prince. That's the only one I noticed. But my brother, who's 12 years younger than me, his star is basketball. And it's like everybody was black. No, not everybody, but 90% of the NBA that he watched at night on television in Germany. And hip-hop. All this stuff. I mean, all the people that you find amazing are all kind of modern Bob Marleys, and everybody's black. So for him, it was totally normal that black people are cool. And for me, they were more invisible. And that made me a bit insecure when meeting or when thinking about black people. Not afraid or demonic, but I didn't know, are they different or do they think bad about me because I'm about this kind of stuff, or that's all, yeah. But I mean, that melted away as soon as I was in Berlin and hung out on the African dance parties with traditional drumming and stuff, being my savage self.
In the US and UK, there's been men's movement, mythopoetic, men's rights after divorce, masculinist, feminist. Is there anything like that in Europe that you know of, men organizing around men's oppression, maybe?
I recently heard about just a little bit, and that is just that some media or a popular crime series every Sunday in Germany, they picked up the topic of these, I find it so stupid I can't even remember what it's called. It's these men, like typically on Reddit lists, and making women responsible for all the bad in the world and plotting to kill women. It's a movement. It has a name. And it's just totally messed up, closed guys. I don't know how you can be so traumatized or stupid to then turn your lack of being, because their presence is not pleasant enough for a woman to enjoy their presence. So they feel rejected by women, so they don't get sex from a woman, with women.
They call it incel, INCEL, involuntary celibacy. Yeah, and they're angry at men because they're not having, they're angry at women because they're not having sex with these men.
That is so insane. But apparently it also exists in Europe now because they are copy-pasting from the internet, all the bullshit from America, that is just so stupid. It's so unnecessary to have that over here. But it's a really sick wave in the past 10 years that Europe copy-pastes everything from America. Maybe because it's worse than before, we've had all the American TV shows for the past 50 years, which, if you think about it, this is what makes us Americans, We read more about Obama and Trump on front pages than about our own politicians because they're always so outrageous. So why do we actually care so much about our main newspaper front pages about the American president? It's not that America is not influential on the planet, but that seems a bit exaggerated unless you start thinking we are Americans. And I think that's a plan, by the way.
The plan by Americans?
No, yeah, but and their buddies that because after all it's Europeans who publish it, but they are in these Atlantic clubs. I think they want to create an Ameripa, but with American leadership, because in America it's more outrageous and more controlled, the political sphere, than in Europe. It's totally monocultural in the US compared to over here, and it's totally intertwined with the military complex and Silicon Valley and all kind of stuff. And we don't have these mind control and so on things here. It's in a different way, but it's not as powerful, monolithic from the top. Well, anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that stuff. Pardon me. And I don't observe it very much. But what I also observe is very strong. This Black Lives Matter movement got copied over here. They even copied the gun thing from the Florida school shooting over here. And I said, look, guys, what are you trying? This doesn't make any sense here because it's not really a topic, this gun violence thing. Then they did the Black Lives Matter thing all over here, but it's like totally not the same dimension. I mean, it happens that there is bad police people. But I meet so many good police people. So in America, it's really, really worse. And you meet a lot of police people, especially, for example, in Germany. And I know some from my volleyball club. These are just really good-meaning buddies. They are well-meaning citizens. They are okay folks. And that, to me, seems rather rare in the US. And they are made... it's really tough. Even these sharp hats and these mirror glasses that I saw many times. This is really hostile. This is not friendly. And then how quickly, feet on the heads on the car and stuff, and the guns drawn. But I also understand it's a response because there's so many crazy people and violent people. So you need to protect yourself as a police person. So I understand why they do it. But at the same time, I understand that it's a really badly paid job. So that attracts a certain kind of people who are also, I don't know, it's probably the wrong way, but a bit more redneckish, where maybe violence is a bit more prone. Whereas in Germany, it's not super well paid, but considerably better than in America, which means your own emotions are more balanced, further, you're a state employee, that means for the rest of your life, and then you get a good pension. And they are very, very trained to de-escalate, for example. I don't understand why the Americans, somebody runs away and they shoot them 10 times in the back, or is in front of them with a bloody a knife or some piece of metal, and they shoot in the heart. Where in Germany they will shoot in the leg. You're 10 yards away, or 5, you shoot in the leg. This is the German training, and it's very common sense, just so the person doesn't stab you. But in America, they really shoot in the chest. That is so stupid. So it's a very, very different degree of human under stress, badly paid, plus really badly trained, obviously. So that means the violence against people of color in Europe, I mean, it's like ridiculously less dramatic than in the US. But they copy-paste the whole thing, but they also copy-paste now the post-colonial or racism and justice and so on. And this is tough in a way. I wrote about it today, and I told it a National Public Radio guy in 2012 in New York, and I said, look, guys, in Europe, hardly anyone has even used the term race for decades. Because in Europe, it's more scientific. And that they say the Nazis, they want to define differences between humans by race. So they tried and tried to find genetic denominators like length of a nose and chromosomes that would justify this. And they didn't find it. And genetics since the 40s or 50s, the 50s, race is a biological term You can't, it's a definition. You can't decide what you would like it to be. So, and among humans of different skin pigment and hair, the variation of gene is not big enough to talk of different races, whereas among dogs it is. And among dogs, they also have very different behaviors, the different dog races. So if you talk about human races, it opens up this whole scope that they come with different qualities and characteristics. And this creates the whole mess. And there is no human race. There's not even a human race, because if there's only one, it's only a species. So that's actually, you can't even use the term race. And that is why it was gone in Europe for like decades. And now in the past 2 years, and you were not to use the term black. It was racist to call someone black. It was someone of color, of African heritage. That's all. It's not black. And now, in the past 2 years, everywhere it's written blacks. Now you call them Schwarze, blacks in Germany, all over the place. Or POC, people of color, you know? But specifically blacks. I mean, 2 years ago, that would have been super racist to call someone black. But now all of a sudden, we call them all blacks. And then comes this thing, mixed race. That is the most stupid bullshit. Because if someone is 10% black, because grandpa was black, but the rest are all white, then he's a tiny little brown, but he will be called as a black one. But he's not black, he's more white, but even the white people will now label him black to give him certain rights, and he says, I'm discriminated, I can't get to university because I'm black. You're mixed race, so then the next time they say I'm more white, and then it's a total confusion. Everybody defines it as they please by their ego and their current situation. And the whole people, the blacks, the brown, the Latinos, nobody gives a shit about the fucking savages. Oh, we're Asians that we discriminate, the blacks, the browns, we want justice. The justice ends when it's about the savages. Because the savages, they don't live the white man's dream. And all the black, brown, and yellow ones went to America, or are there today, to live the white man's dream. And that's to have a big fucking house, to be Serena Williams, to call yourself the queen, you know, and to do whatever the fuck I want with the world. And if now somebody tells me, oh, I can't do that, you know, so I always said, hey, could you list the red ones too? And you're giving me statistics. Oh, the black people are the most badly policed. Oh, if you look at the real statistics, you see red people, they're even more destroyed by police than you guys. So I don't like this unscientific, again, just a bubble. They have a certain, whatever programming it is, you know, but it's not an open, harmonious, it's not true. There is mixtures. It's charged with stuff. And so I told this NPR guy, look, if you continue to use the term race, the thing is, there's a black guy in New York, or this African drummer friend that I have in Berlin, and he says, you got the spirit, you know, or I get adopted to a Native American family because I got warrior spirit in more than many others. So, but by their definition, the new one on Vogue, I'd be the white guy. And I'm not even allowed to talk about red people issues. You know, like today here, I'm not allowed to talk about women stuff because only women are allowed to talk stuff. And only black women are allowed, from America, are allowed to translate the poem of Amanda Gorman into Spanish or into German. You know, they freaked out here now when a Spanish translator translated it. There was a huge shitstorm and they pulled it from him, you know. So it's not, but that also means that no black person may ever translate Goethe or any white author, okay? So, I mean, they're just exaggerating in an abyss of nonsense, and it's just crazy. So that is why, oh, by the way, that is when we get back to what it means to be adult. Because, like, at the shooting, Florida shooting, and then the people didn't want to change the gun laws, and they say, yeah, the only people adult in the room are the kids. And then all the, in America called liberals, or the others call them libtards, say, yeah, that's true. You know, Donald Trump is not a man. you know, got to be a real man. Whereas he's convinced I'm a real man. So, and then the Native American women said, no, he's not a man. We call them boys. Boys in a man's body. Well, actually, I don't really like this because boys can be very healthy. My son never behaved like Donald Trump, you know, so I didn't really like that. But all this mess made me think, okay, I need a proper definition of what it means to be adult. Because the same people that will side, you know, with the gun control laws in many areas of their life, they don't behave like adults, you know, like doing good stuff for people and planet or so on. So from all my madness and my Native American savage uncle appeared this definition. An adult by, and then we go by the real stuff, and that means people that have talked about this for 50,000 years. Because talking about what it means to be an adult is not really a modern society. We don't spend much time on that. Where the savages, which are 99% of the cultures on the planet, we have about 3,000 different cultures, you know, and they only talk about 5, this Abrahamistic plus Buddhism and China, and they have initiations into adulthood. So I can talk about the process, what happens, and also suddenly when white journalists happen to be in such an initiation, right, with Ibuga in the jungle in Africa, there's even a film about it, and then the next day, after having gone through his demons, although he thought I had been a super nice guy, it can't be that bad, you know, and then he heard the Africans say, he was in this hut, and they said, can we really do this, man? What if he dies, man? We get into trouble if a white man dies here. And he thought, ooh, what the fuck? I can die if I eat this root. And then he was getting all insecure. Suddenly it was all spooky, all spooky. And he said, oh, well, I'm going to stop. And they said, no, now you're going to be here. Big guy tips him, no, it has already begun. And he like, ooh, you know, he started being afraid. And that's actually a trick, you know. It's like Uncle Two Bulls before the peyote ceremony. Eric, man, you're so fucked up, you're going to lose all reference points, man. It's going to be really bad for you. He said, what? You know, I think it's on purpose, you know, so that you're actually afraid. So your mental, your emotional body starts melting. Anyway, so then the guy, you know, he thought, well, they said they're going to meet, you're going to meet your demons, you know, on that medicine drugs. And so he thought, no, I always was a nice person, you know, it can't be that bad for me. So, and then he remembered a girlfriend, you know, when he was 15, and it was or 13 and a half, you know, in Britain, and it was really harmless. But it was just like she had a crush on him, and he didn't also, and he said, no, I don't want to. And then she was crying afterwards. And it was like, it's not like he attacked her or so, you know, but he noticed, oh, you know, if he was like, in his super sensual beauty like I was, you'd be super sensitive, you know, and bond, oh, it's just so, I'm honored and so on, you know, you'd be super gentle, you'd make a connection and maybe hug and maybe you'd walk together for 2 days, but say, okay, I don't have a love crush, you know, but you would be like, make it like really gentle and, you know, but he just was like harsh because he didn't understand what was going on. At 13 years old, you're still in your own bubble, you know. So, but this memory was like so intense because all of a sudden his spirit body kind of felt the girl. So he was super shocked. Oh my God, what did I do? And then some such small, insignificant, non-dramatic, medium dramatic moments appeared of his life throughout the whole night. And even though they were very, I mean, it's nothing like manslaughter in the Balkans during the Yugoslav war, such stuff, you know, like very small stuff, but it was really turbulent the night for him. And this whole went the whole night. And then the sun came up and they took him out to the river, walked down to the river, the villages are always on the river, and they dumped him in the water 3 times. Ooh, it sounds like baptism, you know. Took him out and suddenly the whole village was there, you know, like 30 people, you know, and they were singing and chanting and he was still like, woo, la la land. And then they took him in the center of the village and everybody had long bushels of bushes, you know, and everybody came around him, and they made like 30, 40 people, and they took him symbolically into the bush. You know, he's in the bush, and everybody makes this cupola on top of him, and he heard the songs, and he understood that it means he's no part of the tribe, of the family. And he, at the same time, the feelings rushed through him. After the baptism, I never want to hurt anyone ever again. I will be so careful not to hurt anyone. Instead, I will protect and I will carry a part of the world. From today, I am a man. These thoughts, they come bubbling up from inside. This stuff happened to me when eating such plants with the savages. It's something very archetypal. There were thoughts. I never read any such things before. I don't talk like that, you know. So that comes from inside. So here's this journalist, and it just happens to him, you know, and he eats a root with those people. So in this thing, I will be so careful, unconditional giver, not going into emotional turbulences, and I carry a part of the world. This is what it means to be an adult. That's very vague. This is why I say, in my definition, a guardian of this magnificent planet, of majestic mountains, forests, and streams, teeming with myriads of colorful animals, or myriads of animals dressed in the most beautiful colors, for the little ones to grow up in peace, in joy, loving community, unfolding their talents and living their dreams, and protecting the gentle and vulnerable from abuse, violence, and pollution of their bodies, minds, and hearts. This is an adult by what the civilized, be they Arab, Chinese, or European, call brutes and savages. And that's what they all used to be all over the planet. And they're still there, and they're still being downtrodden, and even in Africa, the blacks call them apes, the other blacks in the forest. So, by this definition, if we think about how many of our well-educated friends are protecting their babies or themselves from pollution of their bodies through shit chemicals, rotten food, you know, poisoned air, pollution of their brains with porn and rape and violent movies all the time, all kind of crazy ideologies, you know, pollution of their hearts, you know, very nice Teen Vogue and the German leftist youth magazine Why You Should Try Anal, you know, and all this stuff, you know. Prostitution, just a job. Yeah, right, you know. As you go up in the streets, you nice libertarian Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, you go work the streets for a year, blowing 30 cocks a day, and not there in the nice New York millionaire lounge, but on the streets in El Salvador, and then 2 months in Nigeria and 2 months in the Philippines, and you're going to talk to me in 1 year. Well, it's a normal job. Why do you complain? If it's a normal job, like selling bread at the bakery, that's a normal job. You can even work in the assembly line at Toshiba or Mercedes-Benz. That's a normal job. It may be hard. So if you say prostitution, it's hard. It's a normal job, you know, like a hardworking American, you know. So I think it's disgusting. But you can't say this today, you know, then you're right-wing or whatever, white man, bullshit, fascist, fuck it, you know. I don't give a shit about them because I'm with all the indigenous. It's sacred. So the feminine and the women are sacred. And you lose all your dignity when you do that stuff. And there is a sense of dignity. And this is rightful that they call it shameful and immoral and disgusting. They don't want their daughters to do that and their wife to do that for good reason. There are these inner borders and barriers between the luminous and the shadowy. between the poor and impure. It's just that religion has exaggerated in a bad way, doesn't mean that those things don't really exist in a good way. And at the same time, then for the males, prostitution and porn. I say it's really bad for the males. Don't use it. No, because it's compensation. So why do you use porn or why do you use prostitution? Because you don't get sex. And why is that? Because your physical presence is too unpleasant for the female to enjoy you nude and touch you. So if you then compensate by using prostitution, paying for it, or porn, that will just distract you for 20 or 50 years from making yourself beautiful. And like I explained, I was okay before. I didn't need to do those things to pay for it. But then going on the journey with body work, unlocking my inner feminine, the sensuality, made me super yummy. Because you feel delicious. Because literally, I feel delicious. And the term bliss, it's a feeling. And that is what my female teachers taught me. Eric, if you want to be sexy for girls, you got to feel sexy. If I feel sexy, they go in resonance. Because their outer radar, whatever, feels, there's a nice rosy feeling. Oh, I like this. With him, I can have a rosy dance. The others are gray or whatever. So if you want to have a magnetizing thing that women enjoy your physical presence, make yourself yummy and beautiful, and that means do body work, unlock sensuality, what it is. And it begins with the self-care of your nails and your toes and all this stuff, and you become flexible and you do nice stuff. And so I have a very strict view on these matters of porn and prostitution because they are drugs for a shitty life. So you use the compensation and they keep you from achieving your real dream, because your real dream is heavenly love, unionship with your love. Be it the princess or a prince. It's coded in everybody. And then having babies together. It's very simple. Because we're mammals, but not just in a brutish animal way, because at the same time we are to be God and Goddess and to experience the process, the experience of creation in the most divine way and to bring light on the planet by being like the sun and the earth, who are unconditional givers all the time. And we practice this here for the babies, one way. So that is a journey, because we are just an extension of the God and divine, like they say in India, like Vandana Shiva explained with Russell Brand last week about food and Bill Gates and all the genetic stuff. No, we are here for food and for breath. These are the things that connect us with the outer world. That's why they're sacred. So, and like the earth, she gives unconditionally all the time. It's a sacred universe, and she just says it as a reality, being from India with so many simple people. And the sun, that's how the Native Americans, the power behind the sun constantly gives unconditional. Be like that one. Be like grandfather. So
the young men, that I talk with say that they're told, don't do these things, don't be like a woman, be a man, but they're not told what it means to be a man. So I'm wondering, you mentioned initiation rituals in indigenous cultures that helps young men figure out what it is to be a man. But what do you see recently, like what your son experienced or what you see in high schools in terms of how boys are educated on what it is to be a man, other than don't be like a woman?
Well, in Germany, it's more mellow. They are melting these monolithic ideas, what it means to be man or woman. That's really strong here. In the 60s have been way more impactful over here, especially in Germany. I mean, you can do whatever hell you want, really. It's much more libertarian than in the US, and like the American cities like New York or San Francisco are like so different from the rest of the country. And I recently saw something how actually 75% of all seats are won by Republicans. And that in most of the rural areas, Democrats don't even run anymore. And this is, you can check it, it's a recent newsletter from moveon.org, and that they just launched a new initiative to change that. That there are hundreds of Democrats that want to start rerunning in these red rural areas. Anyway, so that means it's like still the 1860s, in the countryside, and you just have a few progressive cities, but still many of, sorry to say, Californians, I've had these testimonials from women here, disgusting egos, the pseudo new agey yoga boys, really, really horrible how they treated the women, But there's definitely good ones. But I just want to say, in this case, Europe is way more mellow and surprisingly advanced. But it comes, especially Germany, because this deconstruction of fascism, So it was really the pendulum against all the rigid stuff. So that was a very strong wave in the 60s and 70s, plus the left of social justice, but also progressive, of doing meaningful schools for the normal population to develop skills. This is not permitted in the US for many of the poor. They have the worst schools and the worst learning culture and huge 50 students or whatever. You can't learn there. So that's been very strong in Germany because the left, let's have justice for the working population, has been very strong. Plus, it has a long history of science, Germany, after all, still, lots of scholars, philosophy and stuff. So there's a very strong in terms of what's open learning culture, to work in groups and projects and this kind of stuff, and not just frontal. So that's been very strong. And I assume in America you have that. I've seen a lot of these amazing young people. I mean, they're super skilled. So they come from amazing schools, but it may be few private schools, I don't know, And many people speak really bad about public schools and stuff. Not in Germany, the public schools is just normal, it's good. And then you go to Scandinavia. So once again, you have this kind of, these Nordic people, they're not so emotional, they're more restrained, but they have this big sense of justice, of the collective. So my French grandfather told me, yeah, the Germans, they've always beat the French, except for Napoleon, for the past 2,000 years. The Germans always win because the Germans all unite under one Führer, and the French always fight amongst each other. So they have this sense of a collective, and he always said it's good for the world when they have a good Führer, and it's really bad when they have a bad Führer. But there's this one virtuous thing, which you might have, let's say, in Native American nations, and that is you have a sense for the collective, right? And for the economy that serves the collective and not just individual business, which is the American thing, which never gives a shit about the economy, but only my business. Whereas here we have this folk economy. There is Betriebswirtschaft, business economy, and there's Volkswirtschaft, folk economy. That's for the whole complex thing. I don't even know if you have these two differences in your business studies, So in Germany, these used to be two different strains of business study, whether you're the one business or for the whole interconnected society. And this is, of course, necessary because this is the mothership, so everything works together, and you got to give back with taxes, so people are well educated, you have no unrest, there's proper roads built on which you transport stuff, and otherwise there's a revolution. The rich people can't walk in the streets at night, like in America, after 6 o'clock, you can't dare to go out. That's not a life quality, So in Berlin, you can do whatever you want at any time, So, and then Scandinavia is even more, okay? They have this Nordic community thing, but they are even more healthy, also in at the community sense. So Germany has this society, if we differentiate between society, kind of a male thing, and which also the Native Americans have as the vertical axis in the medicine wheel, and there's the horizontal axis. So that'd be the feminine, where we usually say women sit in a circle. It's people-to-people thing, and the males are you doing the vertical things. The verticals are okay if it's done with love, but it hasn't been done with love. So, and the women do this circle thing together, but sometimes you also got to connect to the divine and vertical and other things. And if you do both, you got the whole thing. So the problem is that, so they think of the collective in Germany, but the society is super sick. And that is because they're so traumatized from the past 2,000 years of Christianization. They had the worst sorcery, witches persecution, with incredible torture here for centuries. 30 years of non-stop war, from 1618 to 1648, where the soldiers were mercenaries. That means they didn't get paid, but they would plunder the people. I mean, imagine the suffering, the rape and the suffering for 30 years between the Protestants and the Catholics. They had the invasions by Napoleon. They were always torn apart in different countries. And then there's about 10 million Germans that were in Eastern Prussia, near Russia, today's Poland, and they were shifted back to Germany after the Second World War. So that means it's been torn apart and crushed and smashed and tortured for 1,000 years. So and that really means you don't have a really healthy heart and community relationship with your neighbors, because you don't even know them. They're stinking Eastern Prussians who come with poverty at the end of the war, this kind of stuff. Whereas Sweden, Finland, Norway, yes, they got Christianized, but it was done like this, and there were no big, they had kings and wars, but it was tiny in comparison. So that means they are more intact, they still have their culture. Everybody in Finland, people go to the sauna 3 times a week. And so that means they are naked, and usually, and there was a big documentary, and the Finns say this is why they're such a sane society, that they're used from childhood to sit together with 8 people in the family, with naked grandma and naked 5-year-olds. Everybody's naked. So, and also then when you're in public, or even in parliament, it's only 10 years ago that they have saunas for men or women. So different political parties and rich people, poor people, they say, in the sauna, we all sit together, everybody's naked, and everybody is breaking from the heat. So latest after 15 minutes, everybody's the same. You're all like tired, So, and this gives us, this eases this, different perception. I'm so important, that we're all just human beings. And then you jump naked in the snow or something. And this is so important. This experience is so important, and it's like unimaginable in the US. A friend told me she was in New York, and even in the women's sauna, the women would be wearing bathing costumes head to toe in skin tone. So they wouldn't even be naked in front of women. So what the hell is going on, So anyway, so that means the Scandinavians, they are way more healthy than the Germans. There's so much toxic stuff going on here. And actually, and I recently, I tell people, actually everybody hates everybody. It's not as bad as in the US, but they really don't like each other. They don't greet each other in the streets. Everybody lives behind their walls and stuff. Also here in the village, in the small town, it's not really a heartful community, But they're more respectful, I guess, because they're just not so poor and full of fear and violence, kind of. It's a bit different. I don't know why we ended up there, but so we have a different climate, which also reflects on the schools, the upbringing, and the roles of people. And this is something that I really like. I really like to say, if people want to fix the thing about being cool with themselves and as a man or a woman, these guardians, if you are a guardian of this magnificent world and protecting the little ones from violence and the land from pollution, that means if you act for peace in your city, if you act for the homeless, if you act for the kids when they're in poverty or sexual abuse, and if you make the river clean, then without understanding, you do the right thing. And doing this right thing will make you feel good about yourself. And other people will respect you because you're a socially responsible person. And at the same time, doing this brings you together, hands on the ground, with the dirt in the river and with the kids in the shelter home. And it connects you across class and generations. So just by doing that, you're doing the right thing. And it's healing you because you feel good about yourself. And it's healing your relations with your neighbors and with the mayor and with the journalists and with the poor. So and when you do all that, you become a really nice person. You feel good about yourself. And love starts flowing. You know, the people are grateful. And when you're in that state, it's more pleasant for the females next to you, you know. You become a more gentle person. So I think if everybody shifts from fantasizing what is it to be a real man or a real woman in such a broken society, where even their genetic code of loving the children, they are not even able to do that. You know, what does it say for them as a being? You know, it's harder to love a man or a woman, but your children, that should be really easy. You're totally coded head to toe, and they're not even able. That's really at 1%, you know. So I say, don't try to tell me what's a real woman, and now you have a vibrator collection because you say you are sexually liberated, so you parade. I have seen that. So they parade like, why be ashamed and hide it, you know, in your cupboard? No, there's different dildos and the dolphin and the crystal one, like on the shelf. Say, okay, yeah, I mean, yeah, why not? However, it feels awkward to me. I don't know how they would feel if I would now shift this to the male thing. So if the males bought one of these pocket vaginas, you know, this kind of exists, kind of, you know, to then, you know. So and I say, yeah, this is the 12-year-old. Since it's not a real being, why shouldn't I? The fantasy of a 12-year-old is just a fantasy, you know. And here's the Nigerian big woman, or here's this one, you know. That feels kind of off to me, you know. But so that is, you know. So, I don't know. So they are kind of reinventing stuff at the same time. Sorry, Rebel Girls, the book, you know, or they celebrate these women that achieve in society. So sometimes you'd have a fighter pilot. Yeah, this woman who was a great fighter pilot in the Second World War for the Russians. I say, yeah, great. Now, you know, we celebrate women who were shredding other people to places, you know. Or yeah, Hillary Clinton or some CEO of some big company. All right, yeah. So now the women, yeah, it's equal. Now they do the same shit as evil people in destructive industries that are destroying the planet.
And Angela Merkel is in that same category.
Excuse me?
Angela Merkel is in the same category as, say, Hillary Clinton.
I don't understand the word. Who?
So you said that women empowered aren't necessarily better than men in power, and
unfortunately not. I was hoping they would, but if I look at the reality of this woman, we may say we only hear of the bad apples, but it's too many now. So if we hear this woman in the US, this investor woman, she was a total fraud. She said she invested something and invented something, and it was like $1 billion thing, and it blew up, you know, and she had like lied about the whole thing. Then there are so many mothers, well-off and rich ones, that invent something for the CVs of their kids so they get into elite college. You know, I mean, that is just really bad spirit as the mothers. Then Hillary Clinton, I mean, it's just awful. No, I can start about that. Then Serena Williams, I find her horrible. I find her absolutely horrible. I mean, people say she's doing something for black people and stuff. Yeah, there's a sports athlete, or for black women, you know. There have been other black athlete superstars before, also among women. And now then you're talking about justice. Yeah, there have been better justice people before, especially people that live other values than and do more meaningful things than running behind balls and rackets while the planet is dying. And there's so many poor people, so they're running behind rackets. And we hear her also say, fucking bitch, you know, to the person on the other side of the net. And she I don't know, I haven't heard of a mega foundation that she was gifting plenty of money. But I know she has lots of money and constantly pumps herself up. When I see this Monica Halep from Romania, or the new from Poland there in the top 10, who's super good. They just wear normal clothes. They wear normal clothes because they're doing sports. You know, call me European, but call me Native American, you know, and they wear normal shirt. They don't come up with this super flamboyant, I'm like the super bitch at the same time with fucking clothing range selling it all, you know. And then there was this ad at the New York Open where she's walking around the Queen. It says the Queen, and she wears a thing which says Goddess, you know. So that, you could say you play with that. That's not playing. That is a super big ego thing of empire, and there can only be one queen. And the others are minions. There is no equal thing of the others also being queens. This is a shit paradigm. The royal thing is a shit paradigm, you know. So, and then we look, even then we look at this black superhero, you know, Black Panther or something. And what is he? He's a king from a secret kingdom over there in Africa. He's a king. That means he is entitled to be the coolest, to live in bloody riches, and all the others are his minions to do his bidding. And what kind of worldview is that? There's super social justice. And there's his nasty brother, and they have this cool law. They fight for the death, and then the other one will be king. What kind of social model are you promoting in there? Yeah. And I see so many black people celebrating that stuff, you know? And that's where I see, look, also on the German national team, you have these bling bling people, and they're Arabs and black people. They are cool people, but I'm saying they got this bling bling culture. Who has the biggest balls, the biggest golden car? Hey, who's the Donald Trump? Yeah, who is the coolest Donald Trump? What kind of culture is that? So it's this monarchy paradigm, and it's very, very widespread in Africa. You know, they have, yes, they've had kingdoms. They were not savages. They had kingdoms. But who wants kingdoms? Kingdoms is Donald Trump stuff. You got everything, and you got all the gold clunkers, and the people are in poverty, you don't give them anything. And there was supposed to come this film about, re-educating us. Africa was not savage. Actually, the richest man in human history was the king of Mali. Yeah, the king of Mali, he had so much gold that when he traveled to Egypt, the economies on the way were breaking down because he was gifting so much gold to the people. So it destroyed the currency and everything. And he had like 30,000 minions walking with him. They romanticized this stuff. I saw female social justice Afro-Americans celebrating this at last. This is going, I'm so looking forward to that movie. I was thinking, what's she talking about? And then I had a look at Wikipedia or some pages about this king. Yeah, so, but nobody asked the question, why did he have so much gold? So why do you, as one person, he didn't dig that. So where did it come from? So he made a law that made it illegal for anyone to own gold but him. Nice guy. So that means a lot of people had gold, but then they were obliged to give it to him. So I wonder whether they said, at last the king asked, so I can give all my gold. Or whether they came with knives and said, we're going to cut your balls off and roast you over the fire and torture you to death. If you don't, you fucking peasant, you don't give us your gold. So, and they celebrate the black social justice, leftist, libertarian activists, Democratic Party. They celebrate that as the ultimate role model and showing how cool Africa was before colonialism. I mean, people are brain dead, you know, that's where I look as a savage from the outside. It's the same pattern, but I say Europe has pooped out monarchy. Africa hasn't yet, the Arabs haven't yet, you know, they still romanticize this shit, you know, also in their 1001 Arabian Nights, you know. It's full of kings and stuff. So that's also why I dislike the African folk tales, because they talk of monkey kings and stuff. It replicates the same stuff. I don't like the South American tales, because also the Mayans and stuff, it's an animal jaguar king or something, you know. Whereas in North America, the animals, they're animals, you know, but they have cool stuff. Some of them are, Iktomi is a nasty trickster, Coyote is a fun trickster, then there's Mouse, who's a courageous one, and others. But they are not humanized into hierarchies. of ruling over others. And this stuff works really hard on the subconscious, So, if, yeah, I mean, this is, we may have to cut all this from the YouTube channel or whatever, but I put it in context as a scholar, and I say, why? And I tell people, look, this is a perspective. You can choose to be as you are, but I think many people are programmed on a Win94 that's proprietary, although you'd love to be open source, and you replicate it without understanding the impurities and the demons and the dysfunctions and the bugs and the viruses, nasty ones, which are Wendigo and Wetiko by Native Americans. And it's not white people talk, but you have a look. Wetiko, good, ugly videos on the spirit of evil. And it's a spirit that constantly feeds on others and that is insatiable. Insatiable. And that's why they always want to be richer and then more power. They will never stop. And this is what the North Americans, it's a spirit. It's not in the matter, but it's in the operating program of people. You can get rid of it, and you can get infested with it. So, and they have very good ways to make you resilient to not get infested. And the Donald Trumps and many of the nasty people, and of course the royals, are the most infested with that spirit. And they call it the spirit of evil because it destroys life. It kills it off. So as long as you're in that paradigm, to me it's ugly. So call me autistic, black and white. I see black and white like Greta Thunberg, So I don't, whatever skin pigment and colorful talk you come, I see the shit behind you, And that's how Tubu said, I sniff them out, Sometimes it takes time, So and that is why I say, yeah, go for the sacred and the pure stuff. And there's a lot of work on people, I mean, I've been crying my heart out for weeks. I've been with so many masters where I was small to listen to them, savages. And Tubals called himself a savage, So I use it provocatively, but to also, I've reframed it often enough, contrasted it to the so-called civilized, Then the women, who I humbly, in their presence, I was to learn to get broken up and to become beautiful, like they would love a man to be. And that actually reminds me that once I had this revelation, like it said in these creation stories, that God created woman from his rib, or Adam created Eve from his rib, or whatever the male created the female of his rib. And I've read that it's a translation error, that it's not the rib, but it's the hip. And the hip in Hebrew, a totally stiff monotheistic society, patriarchal and stiff, it actually meant the penis. So, because through sex he was creating the woman. But then I think maybe they flipped it, Somebody said maybe they replaced the female goddess with a male figure. Because there was a time where throughout all that ancient world until 5000 before Christ, you had big feminine goddesses that were giving water. And around a certain time period, they were all replaced by male gods of fire. That was the time when, I forgot, maybe the Scyths, I don't know, there was some guys in the Middle East, they invented the war chariot, invading everything, and then came the first empires. So it was this ugly empire installation at the time, and it was reflected or went hand in hand, coincidence, with the replacement of these god figures, So, and it was shown in another book there, Dancing Shadows, I think, about the shadows. In India, there was this fight after the Aryan invaders came with war chariots from the north, and they had a different culture, and they imposed themselves on the more matriarchal culture of India, and they were actually introducing the castes. They're white, they're priests on the top, then the military guys, really important, second level, and then the administration that makes everybody's minds destroyed, and then the rest, low and outer caste. That is the ancient Indians. So then it's shown how over several centuries the different myths were competing. The new gods and the old gods, whether Shiva had his penis cut off, and then the old Indians invented a new story. Yeah, Shakti just took it and put it back on and had sex with him, and then they had more sub-gods to fight against the nasty demons, So maybe at some place, time they even replaced this stuff in the Abrahamistic book religion, which is all the same, right? I mean, it's the Hebrews and then the Christian and then the Muslims. It's all the same, So it's really interesting because we think it's three different ones, but if you look from the global 3,000 ones, it's just on that one branch, it's three little twigs, and they fight amongst each other, although they're all the same. So, although there's a strong difference because the Christians, they have a Messiah. So I'm very much, he's a role model, and he's a really awake and enlightened one, like Buddha. But anyway, that's a whole different story. I don't want to get into that. But I wanted to finish this thing that it's rather that woman gave birth to man to have a companion. So it's not out of the hip of the man, but it's out of the woman who created that. And I recently read something just last week that all our cells are female. There is something at the set that all our human, I don't know how it was.
The embryo starts out female, and then testosterone reverses the process to make it male.
For example, yeah, there is something deep in our genes. I don't know how it was explained scientifically, but the deepest program written in our genes is we are female. And if you then, they did some experiments, if you do not put a certain whatever into the embryo, it will become 100% female.
It's testosterone that changes it.
And if there was a female baby or embryo, and if you would take out then whatever it would be, estrogen or something, I don't know, she would still be female, but with some more male features, kind of, but still stay female. So
sterile.
The way dominant indicator is female. So, and there are different animal species that can give birth also without the male. So they usually do it with the male, but in times of crisis, when there's few animals and there's no males, they can give the females, the women.
It's a clone.
They can have babies just like that.
Yeah, it's a clone.
And that might have been, that's the original thing of the goddess, but then she decides to split and have a masculine for the diversity, okay? Because the rule of the queendom of nature is diversity in a million forms, and at the same time it makes you more resilient, So that to me appeared once in a very beautiful way, that woman, the earth goddess, who is not just the earth, but the feminine principle, the goddess is the entire tangible universe. It's the 100 million billion galaxies. That's all the goddess. And God, the masculine aspect of the divine, I don't like the term God, it's nice because we associate stuff from the subconscious. The masculine aspect of the divine is the intangible. It's what you can't touch. Inspiration, love, compassion, those qualities. And that is what Jesus, peace, and all those feelings of the heart. Because when Jesus says God's realm is not of this world, so you access it. This is why Shiva has his eyes closed in meditation. You access it in meditation through the heart. There's actually a real door, and you can access those other spheres. The spirit world is only spirit. It has no physical body. And the heaven, where God, the masculine principle is, it has three vibrations: peace, love, and joy. That's the three.
Chidananda.
No, I don't want to be dictator and say how it is. I'm just going to reflect things that from everything I've seen, and I believe my masters who do awesome stuff. So that is the masculine stuff, and that is the heavenly realm, basically. It's always party and peace over there. There's no monsters. So, and that is why we constantly strive to go there, like all the plants go towards the sun, So But the tangible universe is the feminine aspect of the divine, and that is more diverse, and it's not eternal. So the heaven, like sun being very close to it, is always the same. It's super stable. It's always peace, love, joy. And the feminine is constantly changing. Day, night, raining, sunshine, spring, summer, fall, winter, being born, getting old, dying. So this is why all the bad, twisted, misunderstood, more masculine religions that want to get to the divine because they want to get away from here. The Native American doesn't want to get away from here. He says, yeah, it's tough, man, but it's cool. We are meant to be here. And he's tough enough to enjoy it. The ones who want to escape this shitty life here, low quality, are always in societies of empire where the people live in shit and suffering. Mm-hmm. Be it Buddha, be it Christ under the Romans, and the Hebrews, they always want to escape from here because it's so shitty. Let's go into nirvana, so they want to go there. Okay, there's also another reason that there's a big difference to the savages who were here before, okay? So there's a reason why people want to get away from here because life sucks. It's only an empire. So it's okay. We want to reconnect to this higher source of the universe, But then if you don't have love, and most people in most societies didn't have love, we were super brutish towards children, then it gets all messed up. Then you install structures that are hurtful towards people and to the earth. It's not with love, the order that you create. It's not like a gentle gardener. And this is why the priests in these monotheistic religions, they always want to this and this and pray, pray, pray. And that's why they super freak out against the feminine. Because they always want to be in peace and pure and pierce. And they hate it that the females are so hysteric and emotional and so on. It's the other paradigm and they hate it. That's why they freak out and they've always crushed women. And that's so dumb. So in India, they are cool with Shiva being constantly in meditation. He goes into that paradigm. But Shakti, she is dancing and she wears colorful clothes and belly naked and she has boobs. She has sexual attributes because she's alive. She's life. She's the theater of life here, where the divine forces and God with spirit can experience himself in a zillion forms in the material world. It's a play between the two loving forces. He inspires, he comes with ideas and innovation and vision, and she has all this lovely joy. Because you don't even need to be genius to have a great time and dance and giggle, So that is what it's meant to be like. And then we walk like princes and princesses here, but not like the stupid royal court, but just like children of the divine, in this magnificent universe here. And we're not like animals, we have this vertical column, backbone, which connects us between the material plane and the other. That's why we're not like animals. They have a horizontal axis always, so we have a different job. That means if we only want to live like animals or we eat animals, it's not a cool thing, because the animals are very cool with the laws here that you're being hunted, preyed upon, and eaten. They don't panic about that. The bunnies are still going out there, even though there's cats and eagles and stuff, And the deer, when it's being hunted by wolves, it's horrible, but when the wolf is there, it kind of calms down. The earth has somehow coded her that then there is some kind of chemical that kind of the body, then you kind of shut down, And then some praying cats, they will actually not rip you to pieces, but they strangle you. That's like the most gentle way to kill a gazelle. It's super gentle compared to ripping them to pieces, right? So they have these ways of minimizing suffering in the animal realm. But always, if you're a bug, if you're a butterfly, every single second, somebody can attack you and kill you. That is a super intense life. That is what women feel at night walking in the streets, constantly being preyed upon. It's not a nice feeling, But it's okay for the animals because they are badass, because they have a different perception. And they know there is no death, okay, like the Native American. But humans, hey man, it's way too stressful for us, you know, we have a different way how we're manufactured. So embrace the animal thing, but don't eat animals. And my masters say if you eat animals, you do connect with their astral realm and you magnetize those, you pull those energies and experiences into your field. So it will happen to you. So the more you become vegan, the less you even attract violence energies in your life. So I observe it to be true, you know, it's for others, you know, to see, but there's people more wise than me who perceive, you know, in those realms who say that. But so this is where I see this difference, you know, between these feminine, tantrist, goddess religions and the religions who go into this masculine paradigm only. They all want to go there and they bedevil all the earthly experience. And this is super fucked up. The founders, Jesus Christ or Buddha, never did that. And in Buddhism also, I don't think they do it. But so it's totally in Islam, Christianity, and among the Hebrews, among the Abrahamists, you know, it's super extreme. So, and here comes really bad news. First of all, they fuck up the women, okay? At the same time, they fuck up the males. And because they can't live the women, they can't live a joyful life, there can never be a proper companionship. And no one of them can be a spiritually evolved person. And the thing is this, that we are looking towards to become a divine child. That is on the heart level. But where does a child come from? The child is born from the mother. So first of all, you've got to be cool in your first 21 years, the first two chakras, the downward chakras. I don't want to call them lower chakras. We have lower and upper. If we call them higher, they're not better. So the lower three, the first one, this is going really long, you know, but if we talk feminine, masculine, this is totally true how I observe it. And many people can actually resonate with that and feel strong. So the first, the root chakra, the red chakra, Muladhara, is your first 7 years. This is base chakra, material body. And by the age of 7, you are okay to climb a tree. By this time, age of 7, the children are almost all still the same, especially at 4 or so. There's like no differences or so. Then comes the second chakra, the feelings, emotions, and also sexuality until the age of 14. Then sexuality, that chakra is fully evolved. You can have babies and be cool with it. And also all your feelings, that ocean, that orange ocean of feelings. Drama, crying, how do I feel towards this or that person is worlds apart at age 12 or 14 from when you were 6. Also, emotional waves of not being liked, they may stay there for weeks. Back then, after 2 minutes, it was gone. You know, so a totally different operating system now. And if in the first 7 years you learn with the Native Americans or the Tantric, everything is sacred, the body is innocent, you know, you're totally cool with it. Wonderful. But if you're being told, oh, don't touch your sexual organs, already you're going to bug in your system. And that means like, it's like if you put different cubes one on another, you know, so it becomes unstable. If you're fully able to live the first chakra, then you're ready for the second. All your feelings and emotions. But again, you're not allowed to live this and that, you know. It's bad, especially sexuality. Oh, super evil, dirty, you know, females are lower level race and the males must control them. This kind of stuff in the religions. Awful. So, and it's in the males too. So then comes the third, which is experimenting on the world, digesting all kinds of experience, but like in a lab, you know, you experiment on being an adult, but not too serious. You know, as a teenager, you just like to have fun. You just experiment because you can't take responsibility yet. So that's done until 21. Then comes the heart. You have fallen in love before, but now 21 to 28, it becomes much more serious. The love towards men, towards your boss, towards your child, towards your biological parents, you know, it's like way more multiplex than before. And now also it's interesting because before the first three, you were just in your inner bubble. My body, my feelings, my experiences. Now, the heart connects you to the outside, to other people. So now, it's not just surviving in a good way and being in inner harmony. If you have learned to be in inner harmony, now you can start mastering harmony with others. And if you're in inner harmony, easy. If you have self-love and are cool with yourself. If you feel shamed about yourself, love towards others becomes really difficult. So these religious societies, they mess up the first three chakras really bad in the first 3 years. And this is where they become crumpled when it starts about loving other people. So, and then when you know how to love other people, can come the fifth chakra, 28 to 35. That's usually when you've finished your apprentice years and you take the first director position in something lower level. Then, wow, the word. I start influencing. Do this, do that. You start influencing society because you're cool with yourself, you know how to love. And love is not a word, it's not a feeling, it's rather to uplift the other. To uplift my children, it's not to bring someone down. That's not love. Tough love? Only in the worst case, but, so it's upliftment, Oh, I love my children, but I have no time, or I love my woman, but sometimes I hit her when I'm drunk. It's not love, So then when you've learned to love, that you can start influencing. And when you've learned to influence by having learned what you learned from others, then comes this one, 35 to age 42, vision, my own ideas. Okay, I've lived as a teacher at a school until age 35. I know how it works. Now I'm going to find my own school. You don't do that at age 21. So that means now you bring new vision into the world. It's still your vision. And then comes 42 to 49, the crown chakra, you become a hand of God. Ooh, it's directing me, telling me to do this and that. It seems crazy, but I'm supposed to do it. It's not even my idea. It comes from a higher thing. Not my idea, my life, feed my children, live my dreams, but to serve divine missions, to bring peace and stuff on the planet, So this is how functional spiritual traditions explain, for example, human evolution. And then explains how if the first three chakras, the mother, if that's not okay, you cannot birth the child, the Jesus or the Krishna. Because you're constantly in shame or in shaming others. That's not unconditional love. It's impossible. So that's very tough on those religions. And if I say this on my television, people may get upset. But Europeans not so much, because Europeans have pooped out religion pretty much. But other parts of the world not so much. Now we're supposed to tolerate it all. Now the Democrats, by Israel Hirsi, they all celebrated, because the Trumpists hated it, that now religious garb is once again permitted in Congress. Although 300 years ago it was taken off, because here we're going to talk about laws. We don't want to show all these differences. You believe in that shit, you're Christian, you are that, Wait for the Republicans to put, if I write them an email, now you guys, you all come in funny Pope hats, and they have the right to do so. Can you imagine what that's going to trigger in Congress, Wow. But no, it's a nice, pretty Muslim, so now let's put on religious garb over there. Anyway, so in Europe, nobody wants this stuff anymore, I think for very good reason, and it's much better for everybody's joy, and humanism are just really good values, and rediscovering spirituality and how you live. And those totalitarian religions, because they are totalitarian, or they're always interpreted as totalitarian, you behave by what others want you to behave. Your uncles, there's always a conservative uncle. And psychology, and we tell young people, no, you should never behave by what others expect of you. Whereas what I constantly hear, for example, of religious families, 100 years ago by Christians, and now all the time by Muslims. No, it's because my mom or my parents or this uncle, or the Imam, well, they constantly live that. So if the progressives now say, no, it's all cool, they totally betray everything that was achieved in Europe and in the West over the past 50 years. They might as well go back to conservative Christians, because it's the same thing. It just doesn't look like it, but they can't tell the different surface. Behind it's the same spirit. To me, it's black, it's brown fascists. We have that with the Turks and all that stuff. There's Turks telling me that over here. They say the Germans are going crazy. They don't understand what's going on, really, in Turkey and so on. It's a crazy time now. So anyway, and then this, when the sacred feminine can give birth to the divine child, and that divine child is meant to become an adult. And that's huge. And then you can actually really get to that real badass God. And then in yourself you unlock properties that Buddha and Christ did, and what Christ's buddies, his students, did. Because these miracle healings, at the end, he didn't go into town anymore. But his disciples, his students, went into town and they made miracle healings. And he was only on the road for like 3 years or so, I don't know. So that means he helped them unlock that really fast. So today's German leftist magazines and so on, they say it's all bullshit. It's all myth. It never existed, So the educated, scientific, liberal left would say Jesus and so on never existed because they hate religion, how it was, and the church. But the savages know really well. No, Jesus man was like a badass shaman, like full on. So to me, it's totally real, and I meet such people that are doing such things. I've even learned practices so that these energies can go through me and benefit other people. But you can only unlock it if you're totally cool with the feminine, and then the child, and then the father can appear. And that means those people who consider themselves religious have no chance, because unless they totally deconstruct the whole defamation of the feminine, and it's really deep. One more quote, and that was the High Imam of Paris. They have like different levels of Imam in Paris. And there was, in that summer of Me Too, I remember a documentary on Arte Television that's like the pan-European culture station, and there was a female journalist. She was interviewing the Imam of Paris. So that, just as a proof, is not just Eric inventing this stuff. And she asked him, so how is it about, like women and men and stuff in Islam and Muslim populations? And I haven't found it, but I'm always good at remembering, I know exactly that he said, well, the thing is, from childhood, the Muslim boys are taught that women are sub-level, and impure. And so much, and then it goes into the subconscious, and by the time they're teenagers, because they're not indoctrinated, you didn't say that, but as little children, when they don't understand anything, they're being told these things. So by the time they're teenagers, it's very solid, and it's very deep in the subconscious, so that a Muslim man, quote, a Muslim man will never be able to meet a woman as equal. He said that. And he said it in a relaxed way, not indifferent to it, And that means the development of the personality ends, and they are stuck at the level of age 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. He said on a TV interview, And she said, well, that's really tough what you're saying. He said, yeah, but it's exactly like your Sigmund Freud explained it. So, and that would be a really precious reference, to use. I haven't found that documentary, so anyone who would now post inflammatory, enraged, outraged comments, what's the source, what's he saying? I say, yeah, you do your own research. Eric says true stuff. I've talked pants down truth from the beginning of this epic tonight, and do your own research. Arte Television, summer, kind of where Me Too escalated, where some woman interviewed the High Imam of Paris, and then you're going to hear it. It's going to be somewhere in the archives. So, yeah, so it's just about like porn and prostitution if people seek inner peace, bliss, and abundance in order to be able to create outer peace, bliss, and abundance, these are recommended pathways from my experience with greats in different traditions and environments. And people can choose whether they want to hear that and mirror themselves, their psyche, their feelings, their experiences along these things, you know, along a road, the thing so the car comes off, it doesn't come off, I don't know what's called, these metal things along the highway, so your car doesn't go off the road. What's that called in English? And a light
guardrails?
Maybe. So it's just so you, also at bridges you have it so you don't jump off the bridge.
Guardrails.
You know? So, yeah, so that is what I usually call when I say these things, you know. I use these things kind of for my life, you know, as orientation points, you know, am I on track? So I just share some of these things with people, and some of them sometimes find it really, really useful. So in the end, it's for people to pick their own. They can have all of the other politically and religiously and torturally and pervert correct stuff on the internet and mainstream media in totally dysfunctional societies where people don't achieve to do anything to protect the kids and the planet or to lead good lives. So they can do that, or they can try some of these. People have that choice. But I shamelessly, therefore, say these things that I learned from other people and myself.
Okay, last question is, are you hopeful about human evolution? Because we haven't done very well in terms of affirming these kind of qualities that you advocate. Are you hopeful or not?
Yes, though hope is not a plan. I'm rather confident because hope means you don't really have a clue what's going on, but I think I have a clue what's going on. I've often said, I've referenced back several thousand years in the past 100 years and progress that's been made. And it's usually said that you can only project your future if you know the past. But then you really got to know it and from experience and feeling, you know. So, usually my perspective that I have, mostly my focus is the past 100 years and the next 100 years, or the past 70 years, which goes to after Second World War, and the next 70 years. That is mostly the perspective that I'm coded, that I'm getting by spirit, which is my mission job as a priority. And what I've seen over the past years now in Germany is something very significant with Fridays for Future, to give this more credit also. Because I didn't give it much credit before, you know, in terms of tangible change, that it's an old paradigm of doing protests at the central government, but in enormous things have happened in the process. And I found that most people, also in the Guardian newspaper, what have Fridays for Future achieved, blah, 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 or on German main television, it's really crap. You know, then they only look at have they achieved whatever, change of coal factories or blah, 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 you know, and they just look at superficial crap. That's ridiculous. So there's an iceberg, right? And the World Peace Corps, the Peace Corps has like a school, World Peace School or so, and they have a nice quote: culture is like an iceberg. It has seen aspects and unseen aspects under the surface. The seen aspects are 1 of 7, and unseen are 6/7 part of the iceberg, the vast majority. So that is in the waters, that's the subconscious. And it's the unseen aspects that give birth to and form the seen aspects. So usually people, they only look at the symptoms and they never look at the root causes. So here they saw some going on at the surface of Fridays for Future. But here's the real big stuff that happened as an upgrade, especially for European societies that didn't know youth leadership. So youth leadership, some really important things are young people take initiative and are in charge. And adults only support on demand. That's very important. And when you see those hero stories, there's lots of people that love it. The experts say the kids rock. The journalists say that's so cool. I'm so glad to tell your uplifting stories. They get invited as teachers and role models to school, and teachers collaborate with these teenage heroes at their school as assistant teachers. So This worldview change happened in Germany. It was inexistent before. And Fridays for Future, I've been at founding events of Parents for Future and such things. I've met scientists for future, there's journalists and psychologists for future. And the good thing is, it's really always been young people that were in charge of the protests. And the parents only got up when the ministries of the different states of Germany, the ministers started attacking the students. If you go out of school, you get banned, and so on, and teachers or headmasters. That's when the parents came to give a shield, a shield to protect the kids. Perfect. They didn't tell the kids what to do, but they shielded them. That is excellent. I say, awesome. The parents, they had no clue, they had no experience with any of that. They perfectly only took that humble, protective role. So the kids can do their thing, just like with good youth leadership in the US. And then the kids, just like Greta Thunberg, but all the other German kids too, they could have these eye-level meetings with Germany's highest climate scientists. And after the weekly Friday protest in Berlin, always in the Museum of Natural History, it would grant a space to meet after the protest, where the kids would meet Berlin's university's climate scientists for questions and trainings. So cool. So you have the public institution, public-private, kind of belongs to the state, I guess, the Natural Museum History, but in kind, they offered their space for free, so they could work on living their good aspirations and dream for society. And the expert scientists came freely at eye level, sitting around with a coffee with 10 kids and 12-year-olds, explaining science climate questions. Just so beautiful. And they were willing to do that for the whole year, and it was uplifting to them. That means it helped those experts and the teachers live their personal aspirations and their professional aspirations to be a good teacher. And also these academic experts, they would love to work with young people, and usually they never have access to them. So it's very beautiful. They give their time, but there is a rewarding experience, very strong and healing. So the journalists came to them, and listened to the kids and conveyed their voices. They didn't give their own opinions, And then when Fridays for Future, when the youth said, don't always take this one or two, but also take the other ones, because they had one most eloquent speaker here in Germany. And then she also said, come on, I know you always want me on the talk shows, but there's dozens. We have hundreds. And she named different ones for different cities. So they put each other on the podium, and the journalists obeyed. Okay, so they followed. Okay, you tell us what to do, we do so. And then the teachers at school, they also started thinking, how can we help them? Some schools protested against the state ministry, and they said, no, we're not going to ban the kids from going out on Friday or give them bad grades, or expel them from school. We won't do this. So the teachers even sat together, and as entire school, they wrote open letters as their statement. Very wonderful. They had backbone, they stood up for the kids as adults with a capital A this time, So, and then they said together, what can we do together? Can we make it an educational excursion? So it's not just a protest, but can we also discuss it at school or in student clubs and stuff? So they started working together. And this never happened before, at a relevant level that matters for society. And this, nobody mentioned this ever. Further, over 1 year, this is a very German thing, it's just so horrible. For 9 months or so, what Fridays for Future mostly did after 5 o'clock until midnight, over 9 months, was to develop a non-hierarchical communication structure among 500,000 Fridays for Future students in all of Germany. So that was so important, so that not 10 people will dominate the conversation, and it's okay, but so they were breaking themselves over different MetaMost and all these online tools, but they didn't even discuss content, but it was about the structure, 9 months. And I thought, damn, could you just please shift to action, So they fiddle about this social justice stuff all the time. It's not bad, but it was their focus. So even if nothing changed at the government level, this is an enormous evolutionary process of the young people conversing at eye level with different professional adults, and the adults discovering it's my dream to do good for the planet, and the kids are the driver. That is so cool. It never existed before. Plus, they have established this mycelium of a communication structure, a whole society. Who knows what that will be good for in the next years, whatever if society crashes or so. This is a huge thing.
That's huge.
Yeah. So I observe things are fermenting, you know. I don't know exactly where it's going. What's happening now? There's this lockdown, so that means for a year or more, no, they were banned from going in the streets. This was basically Christmas 2019 it ended because there was winter and then came all the lockdown stuff. So it's 1.5 years, and since then climate's been off the radar everywhere. So they're extremely desperate. There are very few Fridays for Future groups left, and you got to think about it was like in every German town. It was like everywhere. It's not like in the US, you know, where you had like 20 or so. I'm exaggerating, but here it was like 10,000 or so. It was enormous. And so they have basically all died down, or just 2 or 3 members left. And the psychologists for future, for example, they exist to help them with mental health issues or whatever, you know, with your environmental anxiety and those things, you know. So, and these different supportive adult strata, they still exist, but I hear some voices that some of them also become desperate, but also affirming, I have absolutely no clue what we can do. Like, they are totally incompetent to move things now. Empty-handed, empty-minded, nothing. And this is very important, because I've been waiting for them to embrace tangible youth leadership and projects from the beginning, the new thing. But they would never listen, because they think, yeah, the momentum, let's make a mass protest, and then the government will change, you know, like we ended Eastern Germany and so on. They were all totally convinced. They wouldn't listen. So what happens now, it's falling into ashes with many people, you know, and it creates a humbleness like I had with Uncle Dubo, right? So they will, where are solutions, who can help? Because they all thought, we know what needs to be done, we do a protest and we make miracles. And now it makes a humbleness. And at the same time, they're so burned out, they don't even have fuel in here to do that stuff anymore. So it's very remarkable how over the past 6 months, when I turn up with youth leader stuff and teenage hero stories and saying, we bring this into schools, you become youth leader coach, you have partners in other countries, they create their own media and blah, 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 this whole network of instruments that I have. There's about 30 programs in one web of things. Everybody gets it. And even here, I live outside Berlin now, these are small villages, like 250 people, you know, it's the end of the world, where you could never come up with any social justice or climate program because the world was okay. I mean, everything is green, where is climate change, where is drama? So you couldn't do stuff in small towns and villages. This has now changed, because here, since last summer, we have 1,000 lakes around Berlin. And it's all just these pine forest plantations. Okay? So, and the surface water has dropped by 2 meters, by 2 yards. Every year, 10 centimeters, 4 inches, over 20 years. So, and since last summer, it's so bad that you have, keep forgetting what it's called. Around a lake, you have these high grasses. In German, it's Schilf, where the birds nest, and it's usually with those grasses are with their feet.
Reeds.
Reeds in the water. So the water has retreated, and now there's a beach between the water and the reeds, and this is very, very bad. Because in the reeds, is all the baby chambers of all the birds where they're breeding and where no people can go and where no animals like to go because it's muddy. Plus they had food with the fish that were going there, and the fish were also breeding with their eggs there. So now there's a beach. And in the last year, these small lakes here, that is full of like birds of prey, cranes, lots of animals, And now the bird population dropped by 90%.
Wow.
The people who live there, they told me the birds came, then they saw we can't breed here. 2 days later, they were all gone. So it dropped by 90%. And also the fisherman, he now buys 97% of his fish from somewhere else because he only gets 3% from the lake because the fish are not having babies in the reed.
Mm.
Plus, they had an algae explosion.
Mm.
So, because these are relatively small lakes and they are connected just by little trickle from lake to lake, and now there's no trickle anymore. So they become stale, stinky ponds.
Mm.
And the locals, they realize if this goes on for one more year with these hyper hot summers that we've had for 3 years, and this quote, it's going to be shit. Because it's used to be little calm paradises here, middle class people living here with their nice houses, with the dogs at these lakes, the gentle tourists coming, and this will now drop to be shithole villages next to a mud hole.
Oh gosh.
No more bird songs.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So it's getting people to organize. I have to leave get off at 1. So you're saying these environmental changes are motivating people to organize.
Yes. Since last year, and I asked them, when did you develop a love for nature? They said they lived there for 30 years, but there was just like blah, blah. But it's last year that something awakened. And they start mobilizing the kids from kindergartens. They're going to the town council. They connect with expert organizations. Said, whoa, these are not academics. These are country people, normally like no clue. And here, Spirit is guiding them to work with the high scientific climate organizations for model projects, and they connect with the commune and journalists. It's amazing. I thought, wow. This is my interdisciplinary work that I normally do at a master level and which nobody ever understood. And now also when I talk to town council people and new little clubs, associations, everybody gets it. And then people say, wow, this would be so amazing to have here. And even like a village head, nice guy who stopped when I was collecting glass bottles on the road. From the forest. It's just 200 people, his little village. But he said, well, that would be so awesome to have something for the youth here because there's nothing, So they really care now. And because the kids, then they go to town. They say, yeah, man, then if they then connect with town and they have then a youth leadership crew in town, then actually your kids here, they have cool stuff that the kids in town don't have because they have no spaces to do projects. And here they can do edible landscapes, they can work on the river, So the boring village kids, they actually have exciting projects for the city kids if you have the right heroes with model solutions, So this is really, really, really lovely and wonderful for me to see. So this year we're kicking this off in many places, and I think this is happening in a million other villages in Europe because also in France, the Greens had like 0.5%. Now suddenly they are mayors in 20 big cities. There's last summer, it's an escalation kind of. Then Hungary is super conservative, the national government, and it's shutting down all the liberty media. But now the people elected tons of progressive green mayors in the city of Budapest, the capital, and in 20 other cities, and also in Romania. So all these cities, countries at national level, they don't know who to vote for, the usual old shit. because the socialists are usually so idiot you can't vote for them. But at local level, that's really where the future is. They elect lots of progressives. And that is where I will connect via different channels, because they shall understand they can only survive if they activate the citizenry to become able. So that is where youth leadership in schools, non-political, for projects that create peace and abundance is the awesome thing.
Great.
So
that's a good way to stop. So, Dankeschön.